spoilers? Oh, lots and lots of spoilers. There was no way to know the lifespan of this particular podcast. Could be an hour. Could be 2. The only lead I had was a name. And that name was Max Mike Movies! We're at the very end, the total end of this short series called Our Favorite Things, in which I, the guy who's sly and who doesn't know how to fly, Mike Luce, and that bloke with the cloak who's utterly woke, Max Levine, choose movies that we have watched over and over and over and over. 3, 4,
and over.
And over again. So you don't have to. Or something. This week it's my turn, and I've chosen 1982's Blade Runner. Not the sequel, which doesn't exist, but Blade Runner by Ridley Scott.
So we're talking about Blade Runner 2049, which is the best of the series.
You have been stabbed and fired. And it's not a series, there's only 2. It is a big movie, and it wants a big cereal, but first, there's this. Hey, do you like podcasts? You must love ours. Well, you're tolerating it anyway, and you must tolerate it on, say, our website, which is maxmikemovies.com, where you can listen to any and all of the episodes. They are freshly and separatedly wrapped and sprayed and otherwise neutered for your enjoyment.
And protection.
And protection. You may write us if you have any ideas, if you have any comments, any lashbacks, and after next week's episodes, we might see some email, which will be us at maxmikemovies.com. Hey, do you like social media? Who doesn't? Social media is wunderbar. It's unglaublich. It's
fantastisch.
All of those things, and many other languages to boot. You can find us at Facebook or on Twitter or on Spotify, which we have yet to decide. Is Spotify corn? No, wait. Is it a grass? I don't know. You can
I think
find
it's
us
like drugs.
Drugs are like that. Blade Runner is like that. You can find us on all of those different platforms at Max Mike Movies. But Blade Runner. The show. There is trivia.
Mr. Bread. He say you Blade Runner, Mr. Deckard.
Yeah, there's trivia. There is a lot of trivia. You will not believe how much trivia I cut out. I don't think I've looked at a page on IMDb for a movie that had more trivia than this. That being said, I got almost none of it from that particular site. I instead watched a documentary on one of my favorite movies called Dangerous Days. That was nearly twice the length of the movie itself. Yeah. So, let's get going.
Yes, let's.
Budget, $28 million. Take a guess at the overall world take at the time of its original release.
$35 million.
You're only off by 6. It made 41. And by 41, making 41, I mean it didn't get to pay all its bills.
Yeah, so that would not be considered a hit.
No, not at all. This was a really hard shoot. Most of the city scenes, all of the city scenes had to be shot at night, as it was a backlot, and it needed to make the redresses of the buildings look better. The funds were limited, and this meant also a lot of rain, smoke, and darkness. This is the same backlot on which they have shot many, many westerns. Many city, I believe actually, I didn't know this, but one of the buildings in the background is the original Gotham City Police Headquarters from the 1966 Batman show. Lord. Yeah, so, yeah. But it was like they would start when it was sundown and they would film until the sky started to brighten. So lots of 12 to 15 hour shoots and many days in a row. Some of the styling was influenced by European comics seen in heavy metal magazines, such as a comic called Mechanismo, which the screenwriter wanted to use as the title. Other considered titles included Dangerous Days, which ended up being the name of the documentary. Ridley Scott was initially unavailable to do this movie as he was supposed to be directing Dune.
Oh, dear.
This would eventually go to David Lynch for reasons no one understands. Least of all me. Dustin Hoffman was not only considered for the part of Deckard, but was worked with for a while before they decided that, while athletic, wasn't quite the physical type they wanted. My guess is what they meant was, he's too short.
Maybe. God, can you imagine? Yeah, he's definitely a replicant. Yeah, definitely a replicant.
Yeah, that's how he'd played it too. Rutger Hauer, however, was cast without having even met the director. He was chosen based on the strength of previous films. When he showed up to meet Ridley Scott, the director of this film, he was wearing an extremely flamboyant and bright outfit just to mess with him. I believe in Ridley Scott's word, he was wearing a bright, shiny puce jumpsuit, and I forget what else. But
Lord, yeah. You don't need anything else.
Apparently, Rutger Hauer thought this was hilarious. So a number of women were considered for the part of Pris, and they were given access to makeup and other things like the wardrobe to build their own version of the character. Daryl Hannah, who eventually got the part, based her look on, can you guess? No, you can't. She based her look on Klaus Kinski's role in Nosferatu.
Okay, she didn't do a very good job.
She's a lot better looking than Klaus Kinski.
That's the problem.
Oh,
Klaus have you seen Nosferatu?
Yes.
Huh?
Yes.
Yeah, he don't look nothing like that.
Well, he wasn't wearing the same outfit.
Apart from the white skin. I mean, that's...
Yeah. Joanna Cassidy, who plays Zora, had a one-up on other actors for her part. She'd not only worked with snakes before, but the one used in the film was hers.
Oh.
It was named Darling. So, yeah.
Joanna Cassidy, who we all remember as Dolores from Who Framed Roger Rabbit.
Yeah, just a few weeks ago. Yeah. City Speak was a total invention of Edward James Olmos. It is a combination of a few different languages, including German, Japanese, and Chinese, but is predominantly Hungarian.
Sure.
And apparently, when the film plays in Hungary, people laugh their asses off because of what some of the things he's saying. I believe at one point he calls Deckard a horse dick, but there you go. The Tyrell, the Dr. Tyrell that Roy Batty kills, is originally meant to be a replicant. There was a scene written that would show his realization and then his climb to a higher office in which he finds the crypt with the frozen body of his maker. This would fuel his final rage, but they ran out of money and they couldn't shoot it.
Too bad. That'd be interesting.
Yeah, I thought that was actually very interesting. The documentary is very interesting, but it is over 3.5 hours long.
Hey.
So, yeah, let my people go. The jump between buildings that Roy Batty makes at the end of the film was done by Rutger Hauer himself. They'd done it in rehearsal enough times that the stuntman was worn out. Oh. Howard told Scott that if they moved the building literally 1 foot closer, he could easily do it. They did. He did.
Wow. Well, he is a hell of a specimen, Rutger Hauer.
He is. He apparently was a practiced mountain climber or a rock climber. So that this was like,
all of those famous Dutch mountains.
I don't remember any when I was there.
Yeah.
It's kind of flat. It's kind of it floods.
I guess he climbed a lot of windmills. I don't know.
Well, you may not know this, but the Dutch people are not required to stay in the boundaries of their country.
Sure, they are. That's what they have all those dikes for.
Moving on. Roy Batty's last lines, which include "They will all be lost like tears in the rain," were written by Rutger Hauer. His speech was originally full of a lot more references to things not seen in the movie. So the, off the shoulder of Orion, et cetera, et cetera. There was apparently paragraphs of this stuff, of the things he'd seen. And Rutger Hauer was like, yeah, could I not do that?
That's good. I mean, it's already confusing enough. What the hell is the Tannhauser Gate? What are C-beams?
Well, Tannhauser Gate's in Germany, but whatever. That being said, it is one of the most memorable lines of the film. And they liked it. They did this. He improvised it at a table read. They liked it so much they kept it in. Gaff's line after Batty's death was cut in half and would shed a very different light on Deckard's character. And I should have said this earlier, but for those who have not seen the film, there's kind of a lot of speculation in this film and a lot of stuff not said, and there's a lot of, I wouldn't say it's a twist, but if you have not seen the film, you might want to stop now and go watch it. Not only because we highly recommend it, but because, yeah. Gaff's line after Batty's death was cut in half and would have shed a very different light on Deckard's character. It is in full, "You did a man's job, sir," which is the part we hear. The rest of the line is, "But are you sure you're a man?"
Oh, all right.
And
highlighting the idea that Deckard might be a replicant.
Correct.
Yeah.
But yes, that is filmed. I saw it in the documentary. Related to that, there are shots right after Deckard and Rachel are close that clearly show the same red glow in Deckard's eyes, but they were edited out. There was actually a big to-do about this, and it had been discussed before there was an online thing. It had been discussed in fan clubs and stuff for years. Was Deckard a replicant?
Yeah.
And we'll get into that later. And the official word for a long time was no. That's certainly what Harrison Ford said, and it's certainly what Rutger Hauer was led to believe. And it turns out that Harrison Ford had spoken with Ridley Scott before the film saying, I want it in writing that he's not a replicant. And apparently Ridley Scott said, okay, and then went and filmed these things anyway, and has since said in interviews, yeah, he is. Which pissed both Rutger Hauer and Harrison Ford off, but we'll get to that. Yeah. The original theatrical cut, which is not the version we are watching the so-called director's cut, and we'll get to that too, of this movie had a voiceover added, and it was felt by studio brass that the movie was too confusing without some kind of explanation. While many people have criticized it, 4 different sources claim credit for coming up with the idea, and Scott claims never to have been against it. Harrison Ford hated doing it, thought it pointless and weird in outtakes from some of the unused portions, which are also in the documentary. And it's really funny, because he'll sit there and read this line and go, that was weird. Just not interesting, yeah. The tacked-on happy ending was indeed tacked on.
Yeah, really, you could tell. The first time I saw it, I was like, this doesn't fit the rest of the movie.
Yeah, they literally drive into the sunset. I wish I could describe it another way, but that's what they do. The studio felt the movie was too much of a downer, so wanted scenes of Deckard and Rachel literally driving off into the sunset. So they strapped a spinner onto a truck, stuck Ford and Young in it, and added a dash of unused footage from The Shining.
Really? That was from The Shining?
Yep. And they had Kubrick's permission. He said, as long as you don't use any footage that was actually in the movie, I don't care. And Kubrick is well known for shooting way more footage than he needs. Something like 10 to 20 times more footage than he needs. Yeah, or more, yeah. This film had a lot of competition the year it came out, not least of which was from, can you guess?
What, 1982? I don't know.
E.T.
Oh, yes.
And John Carpenter's pretty amazing remake of The Thing. One of the other things that was to hamper its chances were the fact that the other big movies of the year were outstandingly positive and that people were just not in the mood for something dark. The original opening of this film, which would introduce the Deckard character, was basically recycled, shot for shot, for the opening for the sequel, Blade Runner 2049, which never happened. Though it's mentioned that 6 replicants escaped and 1 was killed, it's thought to be a mistake that there's one never dealt with in the film. There was a 5th replicant character, but she was not able to be filmed due to the budgetary constraints. This is supposedly Scott's favorite movie of his own, with the 2007 final cut being his favorite version. He's wrong. We'll talk about that too. The version we're watching, the so-called director's cut, wasn't any such thing. A 70mm print was found in the Warner Archive and was believed to be the international cut. A local 70mm film festival requested the print, and it was sent sight unseen. When it was found to be a totally different cut, it was highly requested, and there were sold-out shows. Warner re-released this version as the director's cut, though Scott had not approved it as such. There wasn't time to fix it, so it was released the way they found it, which, to be fair, was actually Scott's cut in the first place, which had removed the horrible voiceover.
Yeah.
There really is tons and tons more, but I'm going to stop there.
Okay.
The show's nearly half over. And now, the plot. We've said it before, we're going to say it again, strap in. Or on. It's the far-flung future of 2019.
Ooh.
Right.
Last year.
Yeah. Earth has become inundated with pollution. Most of the animal population has died. There are off-world colonies that the richer folk flock to, hoping to make a new start. Because the poorer folks can't make the trek, technology has responded with replicants, artificially made humans who think, breathe, and otherwise act just like the real thing, except for one major detail. They only live for 4 years. When dead, they're tossed aside and new ones take their place. Dissatisfied with this, 4 replicants escape the off-world colonies and make it back to Earth to confront the company that made them and try to live longer than 4 years. This is illegal. Any replicants on Earth are destroyed or retired on site by specially trained police called Blade Runners. When these 4 arrive, one of them, being tested to see if he is indeed a replicant, kills the top Blade Runner. This causes Rick Deckard, an ex-Blade Runner, to be reinstated so that he can retire the 4 replicants. As he hunts them, he encounters Rachel, a new, higher-end replicant that's so perfectly made she doesn't even know she's a replicant. Knowing that he's going to have to eventually deal with her as well, Deckard still falls in love. Oh. Can I get an aw?
Oh.
Thank you. Slowly, he tracks his target, taking one of them down. A second is shot by Rachel when he tries to kill Deckard. The last 2 are getting closer and closer to their maker, Dr. Tyrell, in hopes that he can answer their needs about what they are and how they can gain more life. Deckard shoots the third but the last. Roy Batty turns the tables and starts to chase Deckard. In a final showdown, Deckard not only confronts Roy Batty, but the very idea of what life itself means. Batty's life comes to an end as programmed in front of a stunned Deckard. Escaping with Rachel, even knowing what she is and that their lifetime is likely as short as Batty's, Deckard ducks his job and flees for whatever life they have. Into The Shining. The Lowdown.
We'll say at that hotel up there, it looks nice.
I love that maze. Isn't that cool? Yeah.
Yeah, the caretaker seems like a sweetheart.
It's so shiny. I love those twins. Anyway, we're talking about Blade Runner. A Ridley Scott film. So, Max, did we see it together? I don't think so, because I think you were in school. You were in college.
82, yeah. I think I saw it when I was in college. I think I came back during one of the vacations and saw it again with you.
Okay.
But the first time I saw it, I don't think so.
Do you remember, I know it's a long time ago, do you remember your reaction to it upon initially seeing it?
Yeah, I was kind of blown away by the way it looked.
Yep.
I thought it was, I have to admit, I liked it, but I wasn't as enamored of it or ensnared as a lot of people were. I thought, again, the look was like nothing I'd ever seen. This is like pre-Matrix, pre-anything.
A lot.
And it was, again, one of the first, like, wow, this is science fiction, but everything looks dark and unpleasant. That's weird. Science fiction up to then, I was always, bright lights and silver lame jumpsuits and lightsabers and what have you.
Thank you, the Apple.
I didn't see that until recently.
Yeah.
But
yeah, thank God it's not a musical.
I remember thinking it was really impressive. I remember also thinking, wow, Harrison Ford is so wooden, I'm surprised he doesn't have Dutch elm disease.
Well, of course, we'd have to leave that to Rutger Hauer.
Hey, Rutger Hauer,
because he's Dutch, you know.
Yeah, I thought he was amazing. I also remember looking and thinking, okay, what does this mean? I think that is one of the most beautiful men I've ever seen.
Well, in your case, it doesn't mean anything. But yeah.
I mean, in that movie, he is just stunning. This Nordic god.
Yeah, and he's not wearing very much either.
He runs around with
the last. Yeah,
that works for him. But
I would say that leading to the thought that Harrison Ford's performance was wooden was the abysmal voiceover.
Yeah, that I have to say, I don't think I had seen this version that you had me watch before, which most of it isn't that different, except for there's like one image and the ending, but the lack of voiceover improves the movie so much.
It really does.
Voiceover is so annoying and I found completely unnecessary.
Yes, and I said earlier that the final cut, which is supposedly the real director's cut by Ridley Scott, puts it back in.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yes.
Why?
And so this is why I don't know. This is why I disagree with Ridley Scott's choice in this matter. Usually the director's cut is like the full vision. Well, apparently this version, the one we're watching, the 1992 supposed director's cut, was made by him, and he had made it and they'd stashed it away and nobody had seen it since. And then 10 years later they dug it up and it's like, we'll send this off, and nobody knew. And as soon as they showed it, people were like, can we see this again? And they did. They re-released it for its 10th anniversary, because I remember I lucked out. Somebody I knew at the time was a projectionist in Boston.
Oh, okay.
And he said, hey, there's a press screening of the director's cut of Blade Runner. Do you want to see it basically alone in the biggest theater in Boston? which at that point sat 800 something people. And I was like, yes, please. And so I went, and there was like maybe half a dozen press there. Everyone very quiet. Everyone spread out. And I got to see this version in what is now a defunct theater in 1992. And that's when I fell in love with it. When I first saw it, I thought it was kind of confusing. Like, I think it's cool, but I don't think I get it.
Yeah. I found a lot parts of it confusing because the movie raises a lot of questions it doesn't answer. It brings up a lot of stuff. There's a lot that you don't see and that you don't know, which in some ways is very challenging for a viewer because you can fill it in yourself. But, right. It's also it's more work.
Right. And of course, Hollywood thinks people don't like that. And to be fair, at least initially, they were right. But of course, when you're up against films like E.T. and it's like, oh, happy. Okay.
Well, yeah, but you cannot tell me John Carpenter's version of The Thing was happy and upbeat.
And it didn't do well either.
Yeah.
And it's too bad because the original Thing is actually, for its time, is a pretty decent little science fiction thriller. John Carpenter's Thing was like, what's this? This is really cool. I don't like monster movies much, but I like that.
Yeah, that's very much it's way more of a horror movie than a thriller or a science fiction movie.
Yeah, but it's got some good psychological tension in it.
Yeah.
This film is nearly actionless.
Well, not really. Deckard at one point gets the crap kicked out of him by all 4 replicants.
He doesn't. Well, I guess he does, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, all 4 of them.
Yeah.
That's the funny thing about Deckard. It's like, oh, we need the old Blade Runner magic. He's like, who was your second choice?
Yes. Well, the second guy was blown away in a conference room, so...
And interestingly, there was scenes shot with him afterwards. I thought he died.
Yeah, so did I. They said he can breathe okay as long as they don't unplug him.
Yeah, no, they sadly didn't. I don't know if it's in the deleted scenes or whatever, but there are scenes of him talking to that guy afterwards. And it's like, oh, that's interesting. Okay. Yeah, and the central crux of the film is something that it skirts and it kind of does deal with, but does it in such a vague way that, like you said, a lot of people don't even know what's going on. So when the film first came out, I don't remember anybody talking about the possibility of Deckard being a replicant.
Yeah, I don't remember that for a long time. I heard about it a few years later when people were talking to death about it on the not the message boards, but science fiction magazines and such and conventions.
Yeah, and the thing is that most of the things that would suggest that he was a replicant had been edited out. And one of the most major scenes that got edited out was a dream sequence where Deckard is sitting at the piano just sort of drifting off, and we suddenly go to this nearly inexplicable shot of a unicorn running through the woods. And a lot of people thought, oh, he just threw this in from the next film he would make, which was Legend, which we are not going to talk about. But oh man, was I disappointed, because I thought, wow, he just made this brilliant, amazing looking science fiction film. And of course, being D&D nerds, it's like, oh my God, Ridley Scott's going to do a fantasy film. This is going to be, no, it's not.
Yeah. We aren't talking about that. But yes, and then at the end, like literally the last scene, he sees one of Gantz's little origami deals, because Gantz keeps,
Gaff,
keeps throwing them together. And this one's of a unicorn.
Right, and it makes no sense.
I remember thinking that because in the first version of the movie I saw, which didn't have the unicorn shot,
right?
It's like I just thought, oh, that's just his Gaff's way of telling him he was at the apartment and just chose not to kill Rachel.
So the symbolism, just gets lost, like tears in rain.
Stop it.
And then when you put that scene back in, it's suddenly, things just got a lot more interesting. Because what if Deckard's a replicant? And what has he got in his apartment that he is showing all of the replicants don't matter in their life?
All of those pictures.
Stacks of photos. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And my feeling, and I woke up one morning, it just came to me. I literally woke up one morning and it's like, oh, not only is Deckard a replicant, he's got Gaff's memories. That's what it is, and that's why Gaff makes the unicorn, because he knows that it's been a dream of his own. Also, Gaff has a walking stick. he's no longer able to do his job. And this is why he doesn't like Deckard. At least this is all my theory. He doesn't like Deckard because Deckard replaced him. And he replaced him with his skills and his memories and stuff. And so...
It's an interesting idea. I don't think there's a lot of evidence to support it.
I think the unicorn is a direct reason to support it. Because where else would that come from? It's not a symbol of anything.
I think it might. You could just say that Gaff knows about Deckard's memories the same way Deckard knows about Rachel's. They were in a file.
Yeah, but it also explains why Gaff doesn't like him. We don't talk.
But we know why he doesn't like him. Gaff was brown nosing for a promotion.
Not in this version. He wasn't.
We hear that in the voiceover. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's so funny if you watch the documentary, listening to those outtakes from the voice recording with Harrison Ford. It is plainly obvious he does not want to be there. And there's an interview with him later. It's like, I was contractually obligated. I had to do it. So, you know. And there was believe it or not, there was tons they left out. There's tons more voiceover they didn't put in the film.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm sorry.
As well. There are a bunch of things I never got. Like, where's the term Blade Runner come from? At first, it seems like it's a nickname for him. When what's his name? M. Emmett Walsh tells him, need the old Blade Runner. And then then when he's identifying himself to another cop, he identifies himself specifically as a Blade Runner, like it's a title.
Did you look it up, or do you know where the title comes from? Because it doesn't come from Philip K. Dick.
I knew that much because that's not even the title of the short story. But no, I don't know what it is.
It's from William S. Burroughs.
Oh.
He wrote a book, and he actually wrote a screenplay based on his book. But a Blade Runner was actually, I think, somebody who was running black market medical supplies. So they were literally running scalpels and stuff like that, which made a lot more sense.
That doesn't make any sense in this context.
No. They just liked the word.
I guess they just liked how it sounded. All right, fine.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, it's not in Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep, which is the original novella. I guess it's a novella. It's not really
it's kind of long to be a short story, yeah.
Yeah. Have you read it?
No, I tried to once, but I've read a few Philip K. Dick stories, and my problem is, after every one of them, I just want to get in a warm bathtub with a razor blade.
Max, are you saying you don't like Dick?
Well, I think we established that.
Except for Rutger Hauer.
I would not kick 1982 Rutger Hauer out of my bed.
Well, he's kind of dead now, but I feel the same way. He comes up with interesting ideas, but I don't enjoy his books.
Yeah, I like the way I think he handles language very well, but everything is so bleak and dark, and also just slightly off. There's always something in it that's just slightly. All right, this guy is seeing something I don't see. Yeah,
and I don't know if it's something he took or just how his mind works. I don't know. And a lot of people really love Philip K. Dick's work. I've tried. I've read a bunch of short stories. I read Do Android Dreams of Electric Sheep and just, didn't grab me. This is the only example I can think of a book that's been adapted into a movie where I like the movie a lot better than I like the book.
Yeah.
And apparently Dick liked what he saw. He didn't live to see the film completed, but he saw some of the special effects footage. And apparently he was bowled over and he was like, how did you do that? That's what I was picturing. How did you get in my head and make this?
That's nice. All right. I'm glad he liked that.
But going back to one of your earlier points, you were talking about that it approaches some of the issues, but it doesn't out and out obviously deal with them. And the big issue is, what does it mean to be alive?
It's not just that. Technically part of it is what is the nature of life, but also they really kind of dance around, they touch on it, but they don't do much with the fact that replicants are a slave race. They're very clearly sentient. They're improvements on human beings, which we'll come to that there's a couple of things I have problems with there. But they've built them not because they had to. The implication is they can't be remade, but there's probably no reason you couldn't design a replicant from the ground up who did not have a 4-year lifespan.
And there's an implication that Rachel, who's not an Nexus 6, but something above that, a 7 or whatever, may not have that issue.
Where is that implied? I was watching for that. The only time I ever heard anything about that was in the original silly version with the voiceover, where he actually says, "Terrell told me Rachel was special. No termination date." That's it.
That's pretty blankly stated.
Yes, but that wasn't in the version we saw. In the version we saw, there is nothing to imply she's going to die she's going to have any kind of a lifespan more than 4 years. Nothing.
No. And I actually find it more interesting that she may just be another 4-year replicant. But in the original movie, as you pointed out, they actually come out and state it. So, and to answer your question, originally it's there, but later on, in the good version, it's not. And again, I think it's more interesting.
You also get the feeling he knows that because she says, "You've seen my files, the incept date, the termination date." Right. And he gets really uncomfortable. And I assume because he doesn't want to tell her, "Yeah, I know exactly when you're going to die."
Yeah.
That's kind of that's awkward talk.
Well, it would be, wouldn't it? And there's a lot of other science fiction that kind of tries to deal with this and never really comes to a strict conclusion either. Star Trek Next Generation had a couple of really interesting episodes with Data.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's like...
The Measure of a Man. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is he alive or not? And of course, in that episode, Picard says he's a life form. He fills all the criteria. Just because he was manufactured, he is growing, he is changing, he is able to reason, he's all these things. Whatever Alan Turing's test was, he can more than do that. So just because he's mechanical doesn't mean he's not a life form.
Yeah.
And therefore he should be granted the same rights that we grant any other life form. But then they kind of don't deal with that later on in the show.
Yep.
They also don't deal with the fact that the Enterprise's computer is pretty sentient. That's
a whole other argument that's something else.
It isn't, though, because it's basically saying here's a manufactured intelligence that is showing that it is capable of all of these different things that you would ascribe to a living being.
Except it doesn't seem to have any kind of growth or emotion. And the only times it changes is when it's physically upgraded.
Well, there are episodes where they do deal with that. But we're talking 50 years worth of backlog. Yeah. But it's something, again, that they could easily have dealt with and would have been really interesting, but they kind of... Like, maybe it'll show up for an episode and then they don't talk about it anymore.
Well, they deal with it on the holodeck. They ask if holodeck characters are real or if...
Well, there you go.
Yeah.
Because who makes those?
True. They're all individual programs.
And there's actually an episode again in Next Generation where that question comes up and Picard's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh, well, can we just put him in like a zip drive and not think about it for a while?
Yeah, I have to say that really I get why they did it because they had opened I was like, oh, don't do it. Oh, God, you opened the can of worms. Oh, really?
Yeah.
And they kind of cheat on the way out. This is with the Professor Moriarty character.
Yeah.
They do some of that in Voyager with the holographic doctor, but we're again getting kind of far afield. So it's actually, I think that's part of the background of the movie because they're saying, yes, the replicants are superior to us in not just physically and mentally, but it appears to be morally. It's a real condemnation of humanity.
Yep.
Saying, look, we're building sentient slaves. It wasn't enough for us to just build some, say, mindless automatons to do what we needed. We actually built people. I'm also curious as to what goes into the building and why it's so hard. These guys are stronger. I mean, their muscle density must be insanely high. They must weigh more. They can move. Their reflexes are faster. Why is it so hard to tell what they are?
Well, there's one big... I like to overlook plot point in the beginning of the film because Leon works for Tyrell Corporation, and they need to come test him to see if he's a replicant when they are the ones who made him.
Yeah, you would think they would have a secret kind of, okay, well, just, check your index finger under this color light, and look, there's a serial number. Yeah, and why didn't they at least...
looks at a slideshow of them.
Yeah.
So it's like they know what he looks like.
Yeah.
But I guess, to be fair, that pyramid is gigantic. So, whatever. That's fine. I would think that they'd be able to just look it up, but whatever.
By the way, do we know what city that's supposed to be?
It is Los Angeles.
It
says
Angeles.
So.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought so. There's also, I think, a little sort of jab at the Los Angeles police force, because it's very clear the police in this city have pretty much absolute power. Remember what he said? You're not cop anymore, you're little people. And even Rachel, when she says, I can't see this, they're classified, and she goes, but you're a policeman. Not you're you're in the army or you're in the intelligence, you're a cop, meaning you have access to anything.
I mean, it could be. It is a weird view of the world, and obviously they meant it to look like the future, but not too far into the future, and it quite honestly wasn't far enough, but, whatever. And this is one of the reasons that the tacked-on ending really does not work, because you sit there and look at Los Angeles, which is, at one point, obviously had been horrendously crowded and built up and just smoggy and ucky, and now is nearly empty because so many people have gone to the off-world colonies. And the end of the film is like, well, let's just drive a little further north and we can go to Big Sur and all these lovely places. Why aren't people living there?
We're up in wine country and the weather's nice and there's no smog. Oh, so if we just get out of the LA basin, everything's fine.
Yeah.
Like, really? You couldn't all go live in San Diego or San Francisco or something?
I hear Arizona's nice.
Yeah. That really undercuts it, because I liked the idea that the whole world is like this now.
Right. And that was the idea
kind
of
what's novel. Implied, yeah.
Yeah. And so getting, again, back to one of your points, they built these people. And some of them they built, and they say this in the movie, they basically built them to be prostitutes. So, we're going to create you so you can go and have sex for money, which you probably don't get to keep either.
Sentient sex toys. I mean, that's really, what is it he describes, Pris? Standard pleasure model. Yep. Yikes!
Yeah.
And on her, one of the things I like about watching on video is I could freeze frame certain things, like when they're showing the profiles of all of the replicants.
Yep.
And she's listed as military/leisure.
Yeah. So she probably was assigned to, military barracks or some other horrible thing.
Yeah. She was a mechanic, basically an engineered comfort woman. Yike.
Yeah. And Roy Batty did whatever Roy Batty did, which could have been
advanced combat. Yeah, he was like an elite combat unit. That was the other thing that was odd. I was looking at the incept dates for all of them.
Yep.
Roy's was 2016. Why is he dying in 2019?
Because he, I don't know.
Well, of course, we don't know what time of year it is in 2019. It could be December 31st.
There you go. See? There, you just answered your own question.
Yeah, might be.
He was the only one who actually dies of his incept date. The other ones are all killed. Right. And, apparently, one of the reasons that Rutger Hauer specifically hated the idea of Deckard being a replicant is he said, well, it ends up not being a fight between a human and a replicant. It's just two replicants fighting. And to me, the important part is that it's a replicant who doesn't know he's a replicant. And that's the most interesting part of the film. And Rachel doesn't know either until finally, and he even says at one point, how can it not know what it is?
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if nobody tells it, it is as alive as anybody else. Why should it know? Why shouldn't she know? What is that dividing line? And I think that that's what Deckard eventually realizes, is that I don't know that there is one. She's as much as a person as anybody I've met, and he cares for her, although the one scene with him is a little rapey.
Yeah, that scene did not age well.
Not only apparently there was a much longer scene, and it ended up looking a lot more sensuous and a lot less rapey, but they cut it for time, and so...
Yeah, because he slams the door, doesn't let her leave his apartment, he throws her up against a wall.
And he makes her say, I want you, which is gross. Yeah. So I didn't like that part either. Although, in a way, it's interesting because it looks like he's struggling to react the way a human would because he doesn't know he isn't one. And in that case, suddenly his performance is not only more excusable, not only because they get rid of the stupid voiceover, but again, the questions of the film become more interesting. And that's one of the things I like about this film is it doesn't answer anything. And it does it well, so it makes you think, and it's good for rewatching. Besides Harrison Ford, what did you think of the other performances?
Oh, I think that a lot of them are really good. I mean, I really like, to me, one of the most tragic figures is poor J.F. Sebastian.
Oh, yeah.
Who, admittedly, now whenever I see him, it's really hard. All I can think is, hi, I'm J.F. Sebastian. This is my brother Daryl. This is my other brother Daryl. Because William Sanderson played that character on Newhart for like 8 years, and it's really hard to separate him from that. Even though the guy's a good actor, the characters are nothing alike.
Yeah.
But I can't help it. But it's really kind of, it's an interesting choice because Pris and Roy use him shamelessly.
Yep.
And it takes away from some of the sympathy you might feel for them. Even though you understand they're trying to stay alive. They don't want to get murdered. They don't want to die after only 4 years. And it also, they lose a certain amount of moral high ground that way.
Yeah.
Because everything they're doing to him from the beginning is manipulation. This poor, lonely guy who's suffering from this made-up, admittedly, medical condition. I looked this up. There is no such thing as Methuselah syndrome.
No, it's progeria. And it is
That's a variant.
Yeah, but it is a real disease.
Yeah, you age fast.
Yeah.
Basically, your body clock is thrown off. And he was, I don't know if Sanderson must have been in his 40s or something at that point, but the character is supposed to be 25. So, like the replicants, he has a short lifespan. And that gives him something in common. And his life is it's both cute and creepy and sad.
Yeah.
His apartment is full of, as he says, his friends. And they're robots, they're toys that he's made.
Yeah.
Because he's a genetic engineer.
He was very good. I like
his
Daryl
car,
Hannah.
too.
His little truck.
His car is adorable. Daryl Hannah does a great job.
Yeah. She also, just so you know real quick, when she runs away from him, slips, and shoves her arm through the glass, it was not breakaway glass. And she, to this day, she had 8 chips out of her elbow for that.
Ooh.
But they kept it in. She was a trooper. That was the shot they used. Yeah.
You get these little, when they're talking to the guy who designs the eyes, it's like, oh my God, it's David Lopan.
James Hong.
James Hong.
Yeah, apparently really shot in a freezer. So that was really uncomfortable for everybody.
I'll bet. Especially because Roy and Leon are supposed to look like it's not bothering them at all.
Yeah. And I mean, the guy who plays Leon, whose name, Brian, I can't remember Brian's last name.
He was okay. He wasn't great, but what he did, he was great for the part.
Yeah.
That's sort of brute, but also kind of childlike. And that desperation they all have.
Yeah. I'm guessing that this is probably something that's happened before, and they may have gotten further than any other replicants had ever got.
One thing a question I was never entirely sure of is Zora, who her day job is just creepy.
Yeah, and hey, be glad they originally were going to film the stuff we didn't see.
Yes.
Yeah.
She's basically doing a live sex show with a boa constrictor.
That was hers.
That makes it better. And then, why does she attack Deckard? I never was sure, does she just think he's a pervert? Because I gotta say, that's one of the moments where, oh wow, Deckard can act? Where did that come from?
Yeah.
He's pretending to be like the moral turpitude center or whatever guy.
Yeah.
And she basically tries to kill him. Does she realize he's a cop, or does she just think he's a pervert?
I think the idea is that she's supposed to realize that he's a cop. I mean, because quite honestly, the audience is made up of perverts, so why would she care? But that's my feeling, is that by this time... oh no, she's the first one who gets killed.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
She doesn't know, but she knows that they'd be looking for them, probably.
That's my guess.
Yeah.
And
she does a really nice job. She's just, she gets, 8 lines, if that.
Yeah. No, she's fine. I felt bad, too, because she isn't given a lot to do. But, all of the people who played the replicants, Rutger Hauer being the best.
Yeah.
The Dove was his idea, too. That was totally his idea.
I remember thinking, you've been watching a lot of John Woo movies, haven't you?
The sad part is that at the end, when they shoot the scene where he sits down and says, time to die, and he does, and the Dove takes off. Yeah, the Dove doesn't take off. The Dove was soaked. And so when he lets go, the Dove literally hops out of his hand and just walks away. Which leads to the only shot in the film that I absolutely hate, which is
the blue sky.
The blue sky. Which
the
makes
Dove flies off, and suddenly, miraculously, despite the fact I thought it was nighttime,
it still was.
Of course, you can't really tell, but suddenly the dove is flying up into this one tiny patch of blue sky that shows up
above a building we've never seen before.
Yes.
It's terrible. It is a terrible pickup shot, and I've always hated it. I don't think they end up fixing it either. I think they
oddly enough, it's also one of the only really heavy-handed symbolic moments.
Yeah.
Visually. It's like, oh, he's died. Look, the dove, which is often used as a signifier of the soul, is flying up to heaven. It's like, oh, come on. You haven't done anything that in your face this whole movie.
Maybe it was a nod to the audience who they were afraid wouldn't get anything, which they weren't wrong. It is a difficult film. I will not disagree with that.
Yeah, it's not an easy film, but it really, when you see how much it's influenced, I mean, good heavens, I pretty much keep expecting him to bump into someone who goes, "Hi, I know Kung Fu."
No, you don't.
I mean, The Matrix, all of those gritty, dark-looking science fiction, which there have been so many, owes so much to that.
A lot of MTV apparently owes a lot to this.
Yes, a lot of music videos, weird aspects of fashion.
Yes,
all sorts of stuff. It is such an influential movie.
And there was a very short-lived, and I'm sorry, I don't think any of the current stuff being made under this banner really counts, but there was a short-lived, for reasons, subgenre of science fiction called cyberpunk. Oh, yeah. The reason that cyberpunk, I say, doesn't exist, I mean, I guess I could.
Of course it did. What did you mean it did?
Because most of the technology that was supposed to happen in that, we've actually found different ways of doing it, and so we don't need to do a lot of the things that showed up in cyberpunk.
Well, to a degree, the literal stuff. It's the same with Blade Runner. I mean, some of the tech in Blade Runner, it's like, wow, look at the flying cars. Wow, look at the weird-ass gun. Look at that magic photo scanner that can look around corners. And then look at those CRT monitors with green letters on black background. Look at my God, this is not even in 1982 that we had those.
But this is, to me, this is one of two, if not the only, but the greatest pillars of cyberpunk. This and William Gibson's Neuromancer. And apparently, William Gibson went to see Blade Runner after he'd started Neuromancer, but well before he'd finished it. He lasted 20 minutes. He ran out of the theater because, oh dear God, this is starting to look exactly like what I'm writing, and he didn't want to be influenced, so he left.
I remember in graduate school I wrote a paper on cyberpunk, and I cite Blade Runner as one of the earliest influences.
Oh yeah, I think visually it basically wrote the book. The only thing they don't do is they don't have little jacks in your head, which is a very cyberpunky thing where you can.
Well, this was more about bioengineering. It really the computer aspect isn't what they focus on.
No. And to be fair, in that essence, it's not cyberpunk, because cyberpunk has a lot to do with body enhancements and connecting to what would become the World Wide Web, being jacked in, as it were.
But it does have to cover the same thing as what is sentience and what is real. I mean, are artificial intelligences people? That shows up. That's a big theme in cyberpunk.
Yeah, because as people start to replace more and more of themselves, you have to wonder, what's like, when are you not human anymore? Or do we need to redefine human? And I'm going to ask you a question that I probably know the answer to, but do you think in this movie, as they're presented, replicants are people?
Yeah, they clearly are. They have the will to live, the desire to live. They have all of the same faults that human beings do, the willingness to, the selfishness, the self-centeredness. They're not these noble, holy creatures who are like, I will accept my lot. And
like trains.
Like trains, holy, blameless creatures, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way they're presented, they are people. They love, they fear, they have all the same emotions, they have the same kind of desires. I mean, they talk about them as like they don't have emotions. Yeah, that's obviously not true.
Yeah. No, they obviously do. And in a way, they are emotionally superior because they're able to become complete people by having memories implanted in them, not having experienced them. I don't know what the difference is, but I'm guessing that Rachel isn't Tyrell's niece. Like, she is a different person than Tyrell's niece is. There was a part in the original script, one of the original scripts, where the reason that Tyrell made her was because his niece had died at a young age, and he wanted to basically make her as if she would have grown up. I love the idea of Tyrell having been a replicant.
That would have been really interesting. But the one thing that they don't tell us, can replicants reproduce?
I try to deal with that in the stupid sequel.
Yeah, but you already said that doesn't exist.
Well, it's just so terrible.
It doesn't matter. I'm sorry. Things where you say, "Oh, it's handled in the sequel," that has nothing to do with the movie itself.
No,
we don't know if replicants can mate, can breed.
My feeling is that the idea is that they can't, and the reason
I would think so. Because that would just make sense. I'm sorry. If you're going to design a slave race, you want to be able to control its numbers.
And look at the size of that pyramid. Somebody's got to pay that tax. And yeah, here's the Tyrell Corporation, more real than real, right? So you want people to keep buying your robots. You don't want them to be able to make their own, except that they're not robots. It's obviously they're engineered. And so they're basically, people are going in there and doing everything from designing the perfect eye to the perfect skeletal system to the perfect musculature, et cetera, et cetera. Although the the scene where Daryl Hannah backflips and catches Deckard around the neck with her thighs, it's a guy.
Oh, really?
Same thing. They wore out poor Daryl Hannah, who could do that. That's one of the reasons she got the part. She had gymnastics training, and she started flubbing the backflip because she had gotten so tired. And, of course, her elbow had gotten broken in the stupid car thing. So they found a guy, and the thing is if you look at the footage, and it's like, oh, yeah, that's not Daryl. Which is fine. Who cares? It fooled me. I never knew.
Yeah. Took me in.
But you're right. If they don't address it in this film, it doesn't count. And they don't. But I think it would make no sense for them to have robots that could self-replicate, because then, there's your business. Bye.
Yeah.
And also there's, something they don't touch on even in the second film, which is stupid, is does the child of a replicant have an inception date and a termination date?
We don't know.
If it's genetically programmed, you would think the answer would be yes. But of course, Rachel and Deckard, and never mind.
Yeah.
Because stupid. But I think we're getting to that point. And I think it's cool because I don't think it's essentially clear with you. I mean, obviously I chose this, but do you have any other notes that you wanted to get to before we get to the culmination?
Well, it's funny. There were one or two other things. Like when Roy is confronting Tyrell, and Tyrell is explaining why he can't extend his life, even when the first time I saw this, the first thing that leapt into mind is Tyrell lying?
How would you know?
Yeah, I mean, there's no way to tell, but just some of the way he delivers the lines, it's like, is he like that because he's afraid of Roy, which would be understandable?
Yes.
or he's ashamed because he knows what he's done to his creation, he's limited it, or is there a way to do it and he doesn't want to tell him? I don't know.
It suddenly makes the chessboard a much more interesting symbol. I never thought about it, but now that you bring that up, that chessboard suddenly becomes a symbol of the game that they're playing between each other. Right? And that's pretty cool.
Move and counter move, yep. And in effect, at the end, Roy kicks the board over.
Right. And the interesting part is if Tyrell is a replicant, there's every indication that he doesn't know it himself.
Yeah.
Right? So when this one dies, we'll just make another Tyrell, because why should Tyrell die? It's like we can have Disney forever.
That's right. Eventually they'll thaw him out or clone him or some such.
Or they just keep his head like in Futurama.
Oh, yeah. Yep. No, it's true. It's true. He's frozen at the bottom of Space Mountain. I saw it on the internet. That means it's true.
Yeah. Okay. He's in the Yeti costume in the Matterhorn. Okay.
Yeah, that's it.
Any other points you wanted to bring up before culmination?
No, that was pretty much it.
The roundup. So, Max, what do you think of Blade Runner?
I think it's a difficult movie, but I think it's a really well done movie. I think it's really good. It's not something I watch for fun, because I don't think it's fun.
It is not fun.
It is dark and it is unpleasant, and some ways it's showing its age. Yeah. But it is an incredibly important movie. I think it's a huge influence. I think it's as big an influence on science fiction as Star Wars was.
Funny you should bring that up, but we'll get to that in a minute.
Yeah.
Obviously, I agree. I picked the film. I adore this film, and I think one of the reasons I adore it is for what it doesn't do, if you watch the right version.
Yeah. It doesn't hand you things.
No. It treats the audience with some respect. Yes. It says, you can think, well, here's something to think about. And I'm not going to tell you what's right or wrong or what the actual answer, if there is one, is. That's up to you. And in some cases, not answering a question is a stronger stance to take than answering it.
Yeah. Sometimes it's much bolder, and it does require more on the part of the audience, and that is not a bad thing.
No.
People, I mean, the common wisdom is that is that people don't go to the movies to work. They want to escape. They don't want to have to think. And that, I don't accept that. I think there are some movies, sure, where that is the case. You want to just go and be entertained, but there is nothing wrong with seeing the movie that makes you work a little bit. And this makes you work.
And there's layer after layer after layer of stuff. And this was one of the things that Ridley Scott apparently really loves to do. And so the art direction of this film is insane. And one of the reasons it looks so good, amazingly enough, was the writer's strike. There was a writer's strike that was happening during the making of this film. And suddenly the art department had, I think it was like 8 or 9 extra weeks to make sure they could get everything looking really cool. Well, but they design everything. Like when you get on the bus, all of the little placards that are up there telling what you can and can't do are all made up. Things like you can't bring you can't discharge a weapon on the bus, stuff like that. The parking meters have been redesigned. The fire hydrants have been redesigned. Everything.
The look of this movie, very few movies have come close to this level of detail, and it is so evocative and so powerful. Every shot tells you something about this world. It's not just, ooh, this looks cool, but you go, my God, look at how huge all of those apartment buildings. Deckard lives on the 97th floor.
Yeah.
And it's still a crap hole.
Yeah.
Like, imagine that. What does that say? These buildings are so gigantic. The population must have been huge. And you see down on the street, everything, again, I love the street shots because on the street, everything looks really crowded. Everyone's shoving together. And for some reason, apparently, Los Angeles has Jawas now. That was what I think, because there are a lot of little people.
Yeah,
I don't know what they were saying with that. Is that that's because that's showing up in the birth rate, or people with dwarfism aren't allowed to emigrate? We don't know, but it raises a lot of questions.
But it does it in a good way.
Yeah,
not in I don't get it. This plot makes no sense kind of way, but in this is an enrichment kind of way.
Yeah, it's like this happened. It's not really essential to the plot, but it's making me wonder, why is that there? What does that mean?
Whereas a lot of movies are like a snack or a good sandwich, this movie's a meal. Yeah. There's a lot to chew on, and it's one of the visually too. I adore this film, considering that there is no CG at all because there wasn't any. Yeah. This is all miniature photography and matte painting, all old Hollywood in-camera special effects.
Yeah, it looks beautiful, and the costumes are so incredible.
Yeah. And they basically kind of wrote the 80s, right? Like, the Hot Topic owes everything to this film.
Yeah, pretty well. Wow, black vinyl trench coat. Check.
I have watched it many times. Like yourself, I don't watch it when I'm sad or depressed. It's not that kind of film. And it's the kind of film that I won't have on in the background. I need to watch it. And I keep finding new little things. It is not a film for everyone. I tried to show this to my bud, the Weasel. Hey, Weasel. And the Weasel fell asleep. Which I understand. It demands that you pay attention, and a lot of people, that's not why they go to the films. And I'm fully okay with films that are there to be popcorn. That's cool. I don't need to get deep philosophical discussions from a Care Bears movie, or the Smurfs. Don't need
we never did get into the deep Hegelian logic of the Smurfs movie, which I assure you is there.
Yeah, so big vote from both of us. More so, I'm guessing a little bit more from me than Max.
I think more from you. I think you love this. I really like this movie. I don't love it the way you do, but that's fine.
Yeah. But speaking of loving and not loving films.
Yeah, well, that was episode 99, and what's coming up next week?
Well, I think we know. I like how we pretend we don't know.
Right.
We decided we wanted to do something special. And we wanted, quite honestly, to torture ourselves. So we are not going to do a single movie next week.
Nope, we're going to do all of them.
Well, in essence, we are. We're not going to do 2 movies. We are going to go and look at the 11 films of the Star Wars franchise. Now, before you get your little internet panties in a wad, we are looking at them as films.
Just the films.
Just the films. We are not wandering into snack food or trading cards or
Stained
bubblegum.
glass windows.
No.
Neckties, tattoos, anything.
We are looking at the 11 films, which includes all the numbered films, includes Rogue One, and includes Han Solo. And what we're going specifically to be doing is between the two of us deciding what we think is the best Star Wars has to offer in film.
In film.
And what the worst Star Wars has to offer in film.
In July.
Nobody would... Nobody, that's impossible. It makes no sense. No one would emphasize in.
We are not doing a countdown. We're not going to order the room or rank them. We're going to talk about Star Wars as a whole and what we think are the best and worst aspects of the films.
And it will not be an 11-hour episode.
Well, we hope it's not going to be an 11-hour episode.
Yeah. So join us for episode 100.
Yep.
Of Max
100th episode.
100th episode. Not the 100th we've done, but the 100th numbered episode. Episode 100, ladies and gentlemen, on Max Mike Films. Oh, damn! I
can edit that out, can't you? This has been a co-production of The Voice of Max and The Movie Wrench.